Hello, and welcome to this episode of Moments in Credit Union History, sponsored by CUNA Mutual Group. Today, I'm pleased to welcome to the show Dave Chatfield. Dave began his credit union involvement as a volunteer board member with Englewood Federal Credit Union in 1964. His early career was spent as a field representative and field supervisor with CUNA Mutual in Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming. He also spent time with the New York State Credit Union League and worked in the Washington, D.C. office of the CUNA Association. Dave has been the president and CEO of Alaska Credit Union League, CEO of Alaska USA Federal Credit Union, and was appointed by Ronald Reagan as a board member of NCUA. He was the first executive director of the Filene Research Institute, and he finished his professional career with the California and Nevada Credit Union League, retiring in 2006, only to come back again as interim CEO in 2010. In addition to these positions, Dave has served as a director with CUNA and the World Council of Credit Unions. Today, we're going to hear a little bit of Dave's history with the credit union movement, as well as his time with MICUH and some time that he has spent in Poland. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Good, and thanks for doing this, and congratulations on figuring out new ways to do things during this pandemic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you spent some time, I've heard this story, myself, but I think it's a terrific story to share with the rest of the credit union world, with credit unions in Poland or establishing credit unions in Poland. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that started out about midway through my credit union career when I was on the NCUA board. It was around the time that Solidarity was making all the changes in Poland and successful in putting the Russian communist regime to bed. When I was on that board at NCUA, I was the only person that actually had credit union experience that was on staff and among the officials at NCUA. So we got a request to receive and talk with a visitor from Poland, Solidarity, a gentleman named Jacek. And I was the one that was designated to have the meeting and to share some information with him and see what they really wanted. What they really were interested in was how best to go about reestablishing, as it turns out, reestablishing their credit union system in Poland after coming out from under the communist regime. A group of us, staff and my executive assistant and myself, met with Jacek for a couple of hours, went over the structure of credit unions, the regulatory structure for at NCUA, and answered his questions and shared as much as we could. And I think his next stop was going to be in Quebec at the Desjardins Group and the Caisse Populaires and how they do business. And as it turned out, the Polish credit union system involved using some of the best features of both our system and the Canadian Caisse Populaire system, like a common identifier, common logo, centralized data processing and accounting services, things like that Desjardins does very well, and that we don't really have the same advantages in the U.S. So Jacek went away, and my term with the NCUA board expired, and I became executive director of the Filene Research Institute, and located in Madison, Wisconsin. And so that was about 1991, and they had established their coalition interim government in Poland. And they sent a group of Polish people from the pretty sharp young people who were involved in the process of establishing the cooperative financial system for Poland along credit union lines. I was asked to sit on meetings between CUNA and the World Council and the folks from Poland. And one old gentleman later told me in Poland that they had a fledgling credit union system before World War II. And that's first Hitler and then Stalin decided that this was a democratic opportunity for people to get together, and that didn't meet their fascist and communist goals. So they managed to stamp out the credit union system in Poland. First went underground in World War II, and then was stamped out entirely by Stalin. So the folks that they sent to the U.S. that we met with in Madison were headed by a very bright young guy named Shegor Beretsky. Shegor Beretsky was the interim leader of the credit union system in Poland. He had been a member and a leader in the Youth Solidarity Youth Organization under Lech Wałęsa. And he told some interesting stories. I had a chance to meet with him and be with him for on a number of occasions later. He in his role as the one of the youth solidarity people, he ended up being on the run from the secret police, the Soviet secret police, and has a great story about running back and forth between railroad cars on a train, hiding away from the secret police who finally found him, and he qualified for lodging at a Soviet prison at that time. So during that meeting, and they had a reception at the credit union center in Madison. Other people came to meet them, and I was asked to be loaned out by the Fellini Research Institute, excuse me, to help the Poles put together their credit union system. By that time, they had their coalition government in full stride and full transition away from the Soviet system, and they didn't really have anything more to go on other than their visits with us and the folks at Desjardins. We, of course, provided them with sample credit union bylaws and organization charts, and they were obviously had to have a regulatory scheme because of the newness of their solidarity government. So long story short, I was tasked to take some lead and assist World Council and travel to Poland to help them draft their new credit union law and get it enacted. There was another credit union person who was a longtime member of CUNA's management, Bill Atkins. He formerly was with CUNA. He actually he had gone to New Zealand to head up the New Zealand Credit Union League for a couple of years during their transition. So we went to Gdansk, met in Gdansk, Poland, right on the Baltic Sea, and we met for long hours for about a week, 10 days, putting together what we thought was the right credit union system for Poland to have the maximum availability and maximum flexibility to meet consumer needs, but at the same time having the right kind of regulatory scheme and getting it passed. So after we got it all drafted and ready to present to Parliament, Bill returned to the U.S. and Shegor and I went to Warsaw and spent about a week making the rounds, meeting with our prime sponsor, meeting with other members of their parliament. I even had an opportunity one time to was invited to sit in on a caucus of the ruling party. Very interesting, even though I don't speak Polish. Enough people did that they could describe what was going on, and it was quite interesting. Our prime sponsor of the legislation was Senator Lech Kaczynski. He later became president of Poland, by the way. And unfortunately, he and his wife and about 90 other Polish officials and people died in an airplane crash in April 2010. They were on their way to a memorial service in Russia for the Poles who had died in a massacre in Russia. That after the investigation, by the way, on the downing of that aircraft, the Polish authorities had concluded that the aircraft was down on orders from Vladimir Putin. So after spending that time helping them draft their credit union structure and getting it enacted into law, having the Polish Credit Union Act, which contained their regulatory and supervision system, then I went home and they got to work and they started forming credit unions. I was invited back on the anniversary of the credit union organization, the formation, and I had a chance to go and help cut ribbons and open some grand openings for some credit unions. So that was kind of the gist of how we went about it, what we did. Jagger Sporetsky remains a true friend. He now serves and has been serving as an elected senator in Poland, and he was their representative to the European Union for a time. And he also has served on the board of directors of the World Council of Credit Unions and has been the chairman. So he's quite a fine young gentleman, not as young anymore, but this is a while back, and we did something pretty spectacular, I think, in drafting and putting together a brand new a rebirth of the credit union system in Poland.
It's an incredibly fascinating story, and the intrigue, and the behind the scenes work, and you think it's a movie script. So it's incredibly. Thank you for sharing it, and I can't imagine what it was like to live that.
It was interesting, and it certainly would make a good movie.
For sure, absolutely. Who would play your part?
I have no clue.
Well, thank you for sharing your moment in credit union history today, Dave. We really appreciate it. And this is another episode of Moments in Credit Union History brought to you by CUNY Mutual. Thank you.
Thank you.